Jung's view on masculinity, and the Father Archetype. Have you ever asked yourself why your father's silence still speaks? Not in words, but in the way you pause before expressing emotion, in the way you avoid your own softness, in the way you feel like you have to prove something to someone, even when no one is watching. There is a voice that echoes through men, a voice that was never truly spoken aloud, but was absorbed through glances, tension, or absence. It is the sound of a father who was never emotionally present, and it becomes a phantom, whispering through your confidence, your anger, your relationships, your very sense of manhood. Carl Jung called this imprint the Father Archetype, not the literal man, but the inner figure, the internal force that becomes either your guide or your ghost. And today, too many men are still haunted by a father they don't even know how to name. The forgotten voice of the father masculinity in today's world is not silent. It's noisy, loud with advice, opinions, strategies, power plays. But beneath the noise lies a silence that was inherited. You see, many fathers were not bad men. They were just emotionally exiled. They were taught that vulnerability was weakness, that provision was enough, that authority was love, that silence was safer than expression. And so, they passed down that silence as their legacy. But silence is not neutral. Silence, when absorbed in the formative years of a boy's psyche, becomes a blank canvas upon which he paints confusion. A father's silence is not the absence of sound. It is the absence of mirrored identity. You begin to ask, am I enough? What does it mean to be a man? Where does my strength come from? And when no answer arrives, you fill that void with performance. You chase approval. You become good, impressive, invulnerable, until one day you realize you don't know who you are without that chase. The shadowed masculine. Every man walks with a shadow, and in that shadow lives the unspoken father. It is the voice that says, don't cry, man up, prove your worth, be strong or be nothing. It is this internalized father that many men spend decades trying to impress, not realizing he lives only in their psyche. So the man becomes a performer. He performs strength, performs independence, performs control. But deep down, he is terrified of being exposed, because exposure means vulnerability, and no one ever modeled how to hold that safely. Jung wrote, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. For many men, their fate is not chosen. It is inherited. And unless they confront the father within, they repeat his pain in new costumes. 4. The repeating cycle. A man who does not resolve his father wound will often project it onto others. He will seek in mentors what he never got at home. He will resent authority but long for its approval. He will crave intimacy but fear being seen. And most tragically, he may become a father himself, repeating the very silence he once swore he'd never embody. Because what remains unhealed becomes legacy. This is why masculinity without reflection becomes a mask that smiles but is tired, that loves but keeps distance, that fights only because it doesn't know how to yield. And so the question becomes, what kind of man are you when the mask falls? The initiation that never came. Jung believed that every man requires initiation, not through physical tests, but through psychological descent, a confrontation with the shadow, a symbolic death of the performative self, a rebirth into presence. But in modern culture, that initiation is missing. There is no ritual, no fire circle, no elder to say, it is time. And so boys become adult males, but not men, because manhood is not an age. It is a threshold crossed through pain, through honesty, through the integration of what was once denied. And often, that journey begins not by looking outward, but by looking inward into the eyes of the forgotten father who still lives in your psyche. The mirror of intimacy. There comes a time when a man thinks he is falling in love, but what he's really doing is searching for a mirror. In romance, we often reenact what was unfinished in childhood. We crave a soft voice, not just because we desire intimacy, but because we want the affection we never received. She touches you and something ancient stirs, not lust, longing, not for her body, but for the permission to be soft, without being punished. That's why many men collapse after intimacy. It's not just physical exhaustion. It's the emotional flood of a soul that has forgotten how to receive. Jung warned, the woman within is the man's bridge to his soul. But when the masculine is fractured, he doesn't meet the woman, he meets his need for her to rescue him. And no one, no matter how divine, can save a man from a father wound he refuses to face. Part 3. The inner father and the lost guide. You may not have had the father you needed, but deep within your psyche, that father figure still lives. He shows up in your decisions, your anger, your silence, your search for meaning. This is the Father Archetype, a psychological figure who can guide you or rule you. If your inner father is unconscious, you will always feel like you're failing him, even if he's no longer alive, even if you barely knew him, because the archetype isn't about the man, it's about the meaning you gave to his presence or absence. To reclaim your power, you must sit with that ghost. Look him in the eye and say, "You don't get to define me anymore." That is when the transformation begins, not by rejecting the father, but by reclaiming the father within. The father wound in society. Look around. The world is full of uninitiated men, wearing costumes of strength. They become tyrants or addicts, overachievers or avoiders. They speak of freedom but are chained to legacy. The absence of wise fathering creates not just wounded men, but a wounded society. Because without the father archetype in its conscious form, we lack order, clarity, and purpose. We confuse rebellion with freedom. We mistake chaos for masculinity. And worst of all, we forget how to build. We only know how to escape. The unhealed father wound becomes generational. It repeats itself through sons who don't even know what they lost. Jung believed that when a culture loses its mythic father, it creates false gods, fame, status, power. But none of them can anchor a man. Only the reconciliation with the father within can do that. Meeting the shadow to become whole, you must first meet the parts of yourself that you abandoned. The insecure boy, the angry son, the performer, the part of you that still wonders if he is worthy of love. Jung called this the shadow, everything you repress, deny, or fear. And the shadow carries your father's echo. You may have hated his distance, but now you isolate. You may have resented his rage, but now you explode. What you do not transform, you transmit. Shadow work begins when you stop blaming the past, not because it wasn't real, but because healing is a personal responsibility. You must become the father your father could not be, and in doing so, you break the cycle. Part 6. Becoming your own father. This is not about rejecting your biological father. It's about stepping into your own authority. The mature masculine is not controlling. He is grounded. He does not seek power. He holds presence. He does not run from responsibility. He becomes a protector of the sacred in relationships, in values, in direction. And this does not come from reading books or quoting psychology. It comes from embodied experience, from sitting in your pain without numbing, from saying "I don't know" without shame, from learning how to hold another's heart without collapsing into your own wound. You must father your emotions, discipline your reactions, mentor your own growth, and slowly, the father within awakens, not as a tyrant, but as a guide. The return of the sacred masculine. Masculinity is not toxic. Wounded masculinity is. True masculinity builds, protects, directs, and stabilizes. It's the mountain, not the storm. The fire, not the wildfire. Jung said, "Wholeness for humans depends on the ability to own the opposites within. A whole man is both warrior and monk, strong and soft, firm and fluid. He does not fear women. He honors them. He does not resent the feminine. He integrates it. The sacred masculine is not about dominance. It's about presence, and presence cannot be inherited. It must be built, moment by moment, from the ashes of the boy who was once lost." Part 8. Legacy. One day, if you choose, you may become a father. And when that day comes, you will not teach with your words, but with your presence. You will pass down either your healing or your wound. Let it be healing. Let the echo stop with you. The journey back to the Father is not about returning to Him. It's about becoming Him, not in His flaws, but in your awakened form. Your voice can become the one you always long to hear. Your arms can become the safety you once craved. Your silence can become presence, not punishment. This is the masculine revolution Jung hinted at, not one of outward change, but of inner integration. Part 9. The invitation. Now you know. You've walked through the silence. You've seen the shadow. You've heard the echo. The question is no longer, what did my father fail to give me? The question is, who am I now that I've found myself beneath his shadow? Jung left us a map, but the walk is yours. Choose consciousness. Choose courage. Choose presence. Because masculinity is not found in strength alone. It is found in the quiet moments where you finally stop performing and start becoming. You are not the boy who was unloved. You are the man who decided to love himself anyway. And that is what breaks the cycle. If this spoke to something deep within you, comment below what part resonated most. And if you know a man who still carries the echo of silence, share this with him. Because healing men heals the world. Subscribe for more truth like this. Until next time, walk with awareness.